Hi there, I'm Brissa Cabe, the Digital Learning Specialist here at LCMS. Welcome to our App Chat for Educators podcast, where we'll explore different apps, instructional strategies, and other digital resources for education. Thanks for tuning in. This week, I'm talking about GarageBand and how it can be used in the classroom. Can you consider yourself a GarageBand expert? If you're anything like I was a couple years ago, the answer would be a definite no. Sure, you might have played around with some of the instruments and funny sound effects it has, but besides entertaining yourself in a spurt of boredom, what use could this app actually be in an educational setting? It wasn't until I talked with a couple of teachers at last year's Digital Learning Expo that I realized GarageBand can actually be an incredible tool for creativity and enrichment in the classroom. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, GarageBand is a virtual music studio with a wide array of functions and features. From providing digital instruments to play with, to hosting a platform to record and stitch together audio, GarageBand is actually pretty versatile in its uses. In fact, it's my go-to tool for creating this podcast series. But the real question is, how can an app intended for music be useful in science, RLA, math, social studies, or other classrooms not typically associated with the fine arts? That's where a little creativity comes into play. As educators, we understand that our kids don't all think the same way we do, or even the same way as each other. Music, however, is oftentimes a common language that speaks to us in ways that other media simply can't, and it can help us communicate emotions, ideas, and stories in new ways. GarageBand is a great tool for those learners who need a little musical nudge to guide and motivate them to show their learning in meaningful ways. It's even a useful tool to add some enrichment for kids who crave a challenge or need another project to stay engaged. Now, I'll say that today we aren't really going to talk about the mechanics behind how to use GarageBand. For that, I would point you to an Apple book called Everyone Can Create Music that does a pretty great job of walking you through each feature step by step. In my opinion, though, GarageBand is one of those apps that you really just have to take a little time to play around with and get to know to get the most out of it. Today, instead, we're going to look at some ideas and concepts for how to spark creativity and promote student ownership of learning with GarageBand. Some of GarageBand's simpler features include creating custom drum beats, creating instrumental songs, recording your voice, and exploring the hundreds of pre-made sounds and beats Apple already has. So how can these features be useful in the classroom? Straight from Apple's Everyone Can Create series, here are a few good examples. In math, kids might create a podcast to compare a math problem to a real-world problem and explain how to solve it. They could create a poem with background beats demonstrating their understanding of a mathematical concept. Or the beat sequencer is even another great tool for math, as students can explore fractions through patterns. For RLA, students could create and read a short story with sound effects and music to enrich the tale, or explore poetry's rhythm by creating background beats that match poetic meter. Exploring character and plot development is even an option, as students can use Apple Loops to mesh music and sound effects to show their understanding of mood, character traits, or rising and falling action. Your avid readers can even create a book club podcast to discuss and review their library books or the texts used in class. For science, why not have students create a podcast that explores and explains their use of the scientific method during lab time, or narrate the processes behind an experiment? Students can also use Apple Loops sound effects to create audio for a habitat project or background ambience for a presentation. In social studies, students can interview historical figures or create old-timey radio commercials and newscasts for historical events. They could even compose a theme song for a historical figure or event and remix significant speeches or documents with Apple Loops sound effects and music. And I'm sure if you're anything like me, you already know the power of music for memorization in any subject. Students can use GarageBand's instruments, live loops, and their own voices to create songs or raps about names, vocabulary, concepts, and more to listen and review for any subject. These are, of course, just a few basic ideas for using GarageBand in the classroom. Music is a powerful tool, especially for our students who learn best through multiple methods of interaction with content. Using GarageBand for extensions, enrichment, or even an option on your unit's project choice board can transform the way that students look at your content and take a new level of ownership over their application of learning. While GarageBand may not be the go-to tool you're most familiar with, I would encourage you and your students to at least give it a try sometime. Thanks for listening. Until next time. If you have a tech tool, a digital learning strategy, or something else that you would love to share, let me know. I would love to have an app chat with you.